Thank you all for tuning in to ScorchEarthToys@anymoon.com's review of the Bandai YF-21 with Fast Packs toy. This toy arrived in June 2024 at the rather steep price of 35,000 yen after what seemed like an eternity in development. The box is rather portly and basic, no flip-top lids here. Open up the sides, slide out the contents, and you'll find a first plastic tray containing the toy, a Battroid mode specific cockpit canopy, a cover that conceals 2 plastic baggies of accessories and parts. One baggie contains the 6 thrust vectoring nozzle flaps and the intake covers. The second baggie contains 2 pairs of fixed post hands, the fold drive mounts, fold drive is sold separately, and the gold pilot figure. Below that, you'll find a second tray that includes the bay covers and arm parts that constitute fast packs, 2 pairs of guns, one is specific to fighter mode, and we'll discuss that further, a pair of pinpoint barrier punch effects and their wrist mounts, a shell piece to simulate Delimiter mode, and 2 side covers. The final tray includes the display stand, which is essentially unchanged from the previous DX toys, but with the necessary new adapters and the Battroid brace. When you pull the toy out of the box, it's going to look like this. Now, your first thing you might notice is a bent little laser that goes on top of the head. I have just bent mine back into position. There are much more elegant ways of doing that. My way left a stress mark. Hopefully you get a straight one, but just know there's a very real possibility you won't. Next, you're going to move the vertical stabilizers back. You just push backward on the vertical stabilizer. And here's another piece of damage on my toy. There's a little stopper on the front. It looks like someone just jammed it so hard forward, it actually smashed that stopper on the arm, which we'll see a little bit more later. Go ahead and move that back on the other side as well. And then you're going to fish through your parts and grab these little thrust vectoring pieces, and they will just slot right into place. And on the positive note, they're very stiff, so you don't have to worry too much about jostling them as you handle the figure. Next, we're going to install our pilot figure, and there's little nail grooves on either side of the canopy. And you're just going to fit a couple nails in there and lift up on the back like so. Swing it open. There's your nice cockpit detail. No paint apps in there, but it's a good mold. And then we're going to take our pilot figure, which is also very nicely done here, and we're going to go ahead and squeeze him in there, and he will fit pretty securely. We can close that canopy up, and then it's kind of nice that you can see him poking through that little globe right there. Flipping the toy over, we do have another little fingernail slot here that we can use to pry open the landing gear. We're going to pull this back, and then we're going to rotate it around so that the wheel is facing outward. The front bay doors do not have a nice little fingernail area. Start at the front, try to get something in there, pull that open, and then you can get a fingernail kind of in towards the front of these doors to pull them open. And then you'll see a little hook on that landing gear. It does have a little pivot in the center to squeeze into that very tight spot. We could pull that forward. You do have rubber tires that spin on all of these, and they do all lock in that forward position. Although as you roll this, that might be a little bit problematic, but these should be nice and strong. If you have a Yamato toy, you might remember how frustrating those could have been. Much better here. Now you're ready to install a gun, and you have your option of the transformable version, which is easily identified through that yellow paint on the top, or a dummy version, which doesn't have any yellow paint, nor does it have a top. Whatever gun you grab, you're just going to slot it in with this peg into this slot right here. And there's no other attachment point to the front like there was on the Yamato. And the downside of that is if I flip this over, don't pay any attention to what just happened in the front there, the gun droops which is, you know, at this price point, a little ridiculous. And hey, good news. It doesn't entirely drag on the ground, just partially towards the inside. Okay, so that's obviously garbage. So we could take this off and say, all right, that was not pleasant. Let's take our dummy guns. Now, for whatever reason, my dummy guns fit a little bit more securely. And I don't know if you could tell earlier, they're not quite as tall. So if I put the gun down now, or the toy down now, the gun has almost a full millimeter of clearance. You might be thinking it can't be that bad. Well, here's the different loadouts that are possible with the different guns that are possible. And as you can see, there is very little clearance at any point. And if you put the fast packs on the toy, things get even worse. In fact, if you do the transformable guns with the fast packs on, those rear landing gear are completely floating off the ground at this point. Okay, maybe you're into fast packs. Here is the bottom bay fast pack. You'll notice it doesn't have a lick of paint on it, but it does have some pretty awful sprue marks if you're a stickler for that. It doesn't even have the black trapezoid in the front painted in. So they really mailed it in on the fast packs. If we flip our toy over, you've got these pegs underneath, and it does just very easily line up and get pressed into position. Now it does kind of fit in that way where you almost feel like the pegs are too big or the slots are too small. It kind of has this like wants to push off the toy feeling to it. And as I come to the back here, why does it not conform to the toy? Did they design these for a different YF? What the hell is happening here? They don't even connect in the middle like they do in the line art. So it's like just blatantly bizarre. Now you do have a little clip in the front to go along with that peg in the back, so you can kind of line them up and get this all together. Installing the rear fast pack part is just one peg into one slot. It's a little tricky because you have to get the angle just right to make it fit. But once you do, it just presses firmly into place. Now it wants to pop out a little on me. Be careful with the wings on these toys. These parts are removable for, I'm assuming, a gimmick that we didn't get or something. Speaking of how lame the fast pack parts are, this trailing edge of the wing is supposed to sync up perfectly with the leading edge of the fast pack. And you can see they didn't accomplish that either. The display stand is our usual display stand at this point. Bandai's pretty much throwing it in with all DX toys. These little pieces in the front where the toy just rests on have an upper and a lower position. You use the lower position when you have the fast packs on like I do right now. And then there's this peg in the back and it will just go into that slot and then act as a cradle after that. So if I take this and I press down, the toy sinks into there, and now it is elevated and I can use whatever guns I want. And it's super secure, guys. It doesn't even wobble at all. The intakes are as shallow as I've ever seen intake fans be. And if you are a fan of real planes, you know that intake fans are not at the leading edge of the inlet. So it's kind of funny that they made theirs even more shallow than Yamato did. Now with the fast packs on, you could argue that the covers should be in place. They just push right in like so. Now the YF-21 and the YF-19 actually had atmospheric fast packs, so they don't really need to be on the toy. But here's what it looks like if you opt for that. For those of you with a YF-19 full set, you may have an extra full drive and you might want to install it on this toy. What you could do is unpeg the little cavity fillers on your full drive and then take a cell phone repair tool and you're gonna pop off these little panels, and they usually shoot off and they're small and hard to find. So, you know, that's cool, I guess. And once they are free, leave me a comment, folks. Here's my thought. why not just put the slots on the surface level? Are they really that unattractive? And you know, at this price point, there's probably even better integrated solutions we could have had. But then we're gonna grab our attachment parts and we're just gonna push those into the pegs and seat them like so. And then we can take that full drive, just match up the holes, and press down. And there you go. That's what it ends up looking like with the full drive installed. It's just a lot of parts for something that seems like it should have been fairly basic. In the, wait, was that even a thing in the show category? There is in here a air brake, and that comes up like so. There's this little metal thing right here that comes up, the pylon to keep it up. And that is a feature. That's kind of cool. I haven't seen that on a YF-21 before. The other thing we've never seen on a YF-21 before is this many paint applications. Look at them. They are everywhere. Some people will tell you there are too many of them. I am not sure that I agree with them. I think there's a lot, and I enjoy the wealth of markings. Even on the bottom of the toy, we have all these stripes, all this different writing that you can actually read. I have a bay that is popping loose for some reason, but that's no big deal. If I take the gun off here, we can see even more. So yeah, plenty of markings on this toy, and I enjoyed them. Let's do a line art comparison. We're going to start in fighter mode with profile, line art courtesy Macross Mecha Manual, copyright Big West. Let's lay that Bandai DX. What? No, that ain't right. We got a big problem up in the front, and I don't like it. But I'm not going to knock the back too much because I get that this line art is impossibly thin. And maybe you're thinking, yeah, of course, no one could ever be close to that line art. Well, think again, because Yamato did it 16 years ago and it was damn near perfect. So Bandai, do a little cheating next time. Maybe you're thinking, I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. It's not that big of a deal. Well, would you have bought this DX VF1 toy? No. You would have seen it and you would have made fun of it and you never would have bought it. So maybe it is a big deal. Hey, but maybe it looks better from the top. Well, here's the line art. Here's the toy. Does it? Does it? No. No, this does not look much better. Definitely proportion issues abound. And this toy is not cutting mustard in fighter mode. All of that pretty paint is there to distract you from the fact it don't look right. This toy is 620 grams, which is incredibly hefty. And that heft is what causes the problem with the display stand wobbling. It's also what causes the rear landing gears to be a little wobbly as you handle the toy. Not a huge fan of that. But if you're someone who really likes that real solid feel of a very heavy toy, then this has got what you are looking for. Now, a couple last quibbles before we move on to Gwalk mode. There is a big shelf in the back. This is supposed to be flat from here to here, but this Bandai design gives us this big ledge right there that I am not keen on. And then as we flip the toy over like this, we got this big gun sticking out right here, which really isn't a thing in the liner. As usual, I do have a separate transformation guide I highly encourage you to check out. Now, one of the engineering elements that I find to be a very big letdown on this toy is this locking pin right here. It comes from the center of the toy, allowing you to collapse that section there. I don't understand how that was the engineering solution Bandai came up with. I also don't understand how we didn't get a spot that we could just tuck it into. Instead, you got to put it off to the side and keep it handy, which is lame. But what's not lame in Gwalk mode, and I do have the fast packs on right now, is just how beefy
the legs are. That's been the common complaint on every other YF-21 toy, and it seems like Bandai said, you know what? If nothing else, that's what we're gonna solve this time around. And they've done it. Those legs are definitely nice and chunky. The other thing that's really nice is the foot. So we have this joint here, which allows the foot to rock back and forth, but it can also twist, and we can come up and down. We can also come up and down right here. So lots of articulation points for that foot, meaning we can get some really dynamic posing, very stable. The twist point up high in the leg isn't so loose that the legs just want to spread apart on you, which is another problem on other YF-21 toys. So we have good feet and we have a leg twist. We also have a lot of articulation on this panel here. So it's a ball joint here, plus a swivel, plus a rotation point on the legs. So these panels are gonna get out of your way. They're never gonna be a problem for you. The hips themselves are on swivels and they don't do the best job locking in their rear position, which is where they're supposed to be in Gwalk joint, but they do connect then to a ball joint. And since they've elevated up out, you have a good range of motion, as you can see, at that ball joint. And then there's that twist below. And then we have the knee joint from there that comes forward, and you can hear kind of a loose ratcheting in there, but there is a ratcheting, and you can see you can get pretty crazy forward sweep at that knee if you want to, and then you can bring it obviously back. So really great legs all around. Although if you're going for something completely symmetrical, there's so much articulation here, that can sometimes be a challenge. Arm articulation is also excellent. We can twist the arm forward and back. If I lift up this shoulder cover, you can see there's a pivot point here. This is the only part I'm not thrilled with because it's too tight on my version of the toy. You can see as I use this pivot point, especially as I come up around here, the whole extension that the shoulder is on starts flexing, which is a little uncomfortable. Underneath that, there's this bicep swivel, which is nice. And we have this double jointed elbow, which might not win any awards for looks, but is very nice articulation there, great range of movement. And then there's like a kind of a wobble within the forearm, left and right, which may come in handy as well. So overall, really dynamic posing between the legs and the arms. You may have noticed I've got the guns on those back panels. Obviously that is an option in this mode, and if you've got the fastbacks on, which is kind of another cool feature, or you could put them in the hands like we saw earlier. The display stand adapter, very similar to fighter mode, big peg that goes in the back, just snaps in like so, and then you just put the whole thing down on your display stand, and this is first time I've done that, but there you go. Now you have it on the display stand. It's just gonna elevate the toy, keep it stable. Less necessary for this toy than some previous YF-21s, but if you love it, you got the option. Some final thoughts on Gwalk mode. There are these locks up top that you press down as part of moving the backpack, and then they stay recessed. I don't get it. I don't think that looks great. I do like the cavity fillers on the side though. I thought that was nice. Again, I thought it was weird that Bandai chose to kind of throw out how this toy or how this vehicle is supposed to work in Gwalk mode and come up with their own version that has this clean backpack to it. Instead of having all those little stacked vents that we're gonna see when we go to Delimiter mode, they're supposed to be there and exposed in Gwalk mode, and they would be part of the propulsion of the vehicle. So again, just a bizarre Bandai seeming to think they know it better than Calamari, and I'm not a huge fan of that. In the finale of Macross Plus, Gold blows off his arms and his legs, achieving Delimiter mode. You might know it as something else, where he chases down the Ghost X9 unencumbered by all that extra weight. And Bandai gives us a few extra parts to achieve the look. And I do have a guide to get here from Gwalk mode. You could easily adapt that from fighter or Battroid modes, Once you're here, fast packs wouldn't make any sense. Landing gear, all unperturbed, so you could still use those. And the display stand has a fun little adapter that works in this mode as well. Again, check out my guide to see all of that. My only complaint, because it does look pretty good, and it should with these accessory pieces of these cavity fillers and this plate, is that it doesn't really seem like a YF-21 that has simply shed its limbs. It's far too thick, right? This whole center section is supposed to be flush with this back plate. And instead it's like an inch away. So that doesn't work. These plates right here are supposed to be flush again with the back, but they're a ½ inch away. So there's a lot of thickness here that is unaccounted for usually, right? And if you think about what it would be like with the legs in there, it doesn't really make sense that everything is this high up. But most people aren't going to be doing that calculus, and it looks good enough as is, and it certainly looks better than Yamato's 160, although conceptually Yamato stuck to what it's supposed to be and it just becomes sort of an empty shell with engines. So, you know, different strokes for different folks. Clean appearance, if not the most sensible here.
We're going to start off by looking at Battroid mode with the makeup off, right? I do have a separate transformation guide, but the key takeaway is that there is this separate brace that needs to be installed to hold the backpack firmly in place in Battroid mode. And this brace can be a little problematic as you're posing the toy. You might bring the hip into collision with that brace and cause the brace to pop off. Obviously that is super annoying when that happens. So the fact there isn't an integrated solution, and that even with an integrated solution, we can do things like rotate the legs, pop it off, and have it fall over like that. That's just unforgivable at this price point and in this scale in my eyes. So really, really let down by that aspect. Sticking with the brace before we move on to more positive aspects, if you want to use the display stand, you're actually going to pop the brace off and replace it. It does peg firmly into place, you gotta give it that. So I'm gonna pull this out and we're gonna replace it with this version of the brace, which as you can see has that display stand adapter to it. Plug that in and then just plop the toy down on the display stand like so. And there you go, that's how you elevate the toy and that's how you use the display stand. We do have these articulated hands with their thumb, trigger finger, and then the other 3 fingers are one joint. They have their own wrist, and there's also a wrist at the base. This is a ball joint. The wrist is pretty tight, but there you go, a little bit of wrist motion. So that's your articulated hand. I'm gonna use the fixed posed hand now to hold the gun. There's also a fist that's available. Does a great job holding that gun as we pose it going forward. I don't think there's any arguing that if you're gonna view this toy from the side, it's really ugly. And honestly, the display stand right now is making it look a little less ugly. But it almost feels like the backpack is a completely separate part attached to the toy only by this giant shelf at the top. The good news is if you start rotating the toy, you don't notice that backpack issue nearly as bad. Now, from a line art perspective, that backpack is still very, very big. This nose section, which is a little too small in fighter and Gwalk modes, is still a little too big in Battroid mode. So there are just real issues with converting this line art to a Battroid mode. And Bandai's got my sympathies, but I feel like a lot of things could have been done just a little bit better. Now, one thing I really, really appreciate on this toy is that the head has a little bit of articulation within, or the face, I should say, has articulation within that cowl. So that's pretty cool. There's a ball joint in there. It can look up, it can look down, and that is cool. You could also, of course, rotate the cowl and then rotate the head a little bit more. So you've got some cool things there. Now, one downside, and you'll see it in my transformation guide, that ball joint is really small and it's very easy to pop that face off. But of course, it's also very easy to pop it right back on again. If you're going to use the pinpoint barrier punch effect, you have to line up the cavities in the swirl effect with that vertical stabilizer, and it just pegs in just like it did on the YF-19 toy. Nothing too interesting about that. And then you can do these fun facing off against each other poses, which is a big plus for both of these toys, including those accessories. So I've been pointing out a lot of weaknesses. The huge plus of this toy, and it is a huge plus, is that so much of the weight is in the legs. It keeps the toy stable. I can actually play with it in Battroid mode. It has some ratcheting joints in those legs. So if I go to bring a leg forward, another leg back, I have points of articulation and the stability to actually do that. So other toys, the Yamato 160, it's great in how it looks and how it represents the line art or recreates the line art, but you can't play with it. And so if playing with your toy, and of course playing with your toy should be a big deal, is something that matters to you, the DX really brings it in spades. I had a lot of fun handling it, even with all the other nits I pointed out. There's even things like, there's like a pivot point in the intake. So, you know, that's cool. These little fins, I haven't really talked about them, but they're articulated too, so you can get them out of the way of the arms. So much articulation and stability coming together to add real fun factor. And I do like the look of the fast packs in Battroid mode. Here it makes it look like it has the regulation size side covers, which I think is a real cool plus. Now here, look, I've got the toy, it's about to fall over, but look how stable this is. I just apply a little pressure and lean it forward, and now it's rock solid. That is not something you could do on the Yamato toy, where the feet are smaller, they slide apart very easily, and they only have a couple teeth on the ratcheting joint on the ankles. So you're constantly playing a balancing game. Where this toy, if you do knock it off, it's so easy to make it stable again. And again, I really appreciate that. In summary, how do I feel about this toy? It's so-so. That's what I think. I want an Arcadia version 2. I want the Yamato 160 toy with the joints on this toy, and even maybe a pair of legs that we can choose to use in Gwalk and Battroid, or we could leave the perfect transformation legs on. And otherwise, that to me is what we need. And I don't understand why Bandai didn't do that. And instead they said, no, Kawamari, you don't know how to do a YF-21. We know how to do the YF-21. And they did this, and it has braces and locking pins and does not look like the YF-21 in fighter mode. So why did they not figure that out earlier in this process? But again, plays great, poses well, some angles look better than others, especially in Battroid mode. So now you know what you're getting into. If you found this informative, please give me a thumbs up. If you like content like this, please subscribe. And if I screwed anything up or you think something that was missed here, please leave a comment. Let me know. Always love hearing from everybody. Thanks for watching.